Hello and welcome to the first episode of Tales from Midnight Diary for 2024. My name's Gemma, and if you're new here, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. Thank you for sticking with me. We're shaking things up just a little bit on the channel. So the Midnight Diary channel is named after my hand-dyed yarn company, the Midnight Diary, and the podcast Tales from Midnight Diary is ostensibly about behind the scenes life as an indie dyer in the UK, but I also design patterns, I teach classes and do a host of other things as well. For the last year or so, it's been less about behind the scenes at the diary because I've put the business on hold for the last year or so while my little one was small and while I was doing another day job, but we are getting back to it, which is very, very exciting. I've got a number of exciting things happening this year, which I will share with you in due time. But this episode is actually behind the scenes. I am taking you from bare undyed yarn to the start of a very exciting project. So just before Christmas, well, beginning of December, I saw a test call. My friend Cat Crafty Knits is a Devon-based designer and I am now based in Devon, so it's doubly exciting. She had a pattern published in a magazine a while ago, which again, very exciting, but she's got the rights back and she's, so I'm going to sort my slip extravaganza out a bit. And so she is re-releasing it and is doing some updates. One of which is the kiddie sizes she's having a look at. So she was asking for test knitters. And I want to start my baby gifts box early this year because babies have a habit of just appearing left, right and centre all at once like buses. And I'm not known for being particularly prepared. So the test deadline was super generous. It was a good 2 months. I'm like, yep, sign me up. And I wanted to dye the yarn for it. So this episode takes you from the bare yarn through to the final production, the cast on piece. So I'm going to leave you last week or the week before when I started dyeing the yarn, and I'll meet you back here in a wee while to show you what I have been up to today. Good evening. Hello. This week's Tales from Midnight Diary, we are actually at the diary. Well, at the moment it's my kitchen, but you know, we'll work on that. We're going to be dyeing just 2 skeins of yarn this week. This is for a test knit for the Over the Ocean sweater by Cat Crafty Knits. And I'm using 2 skeins of merino DK that my friend Jude sent to me because I'm all out of undyed yarn at the moment. So stage 1 tonight is going to be soaking the yarn ready for dyeing tomorrow night when I get in from work, because once again, with a toddler and a busy household, it's nighttime dyeing. So we're starting with some food grade citric acid. I really don't have much left. I'll have to put in an order soon. I'm using my cooking pot for this because it's food grade citric acid and I'm only soaking the yarn. I'm not going to use any dyes or harmful chemicals in this pot. So I've mixed in the acid, it's cold water. Now to take the skein and adjust it. So I'm just going to undo it, which is actually really hard one-handed holding the camera. Whee! There we go. Give it a shimmy. I'm just going to check it's not twisted, fold it round, and then I'll be adding the cable ties. Cable ties added, I'm just popping it in the pot, and you'll notice I am not pushing it in to submerge it. Believe it or not, this superwash merino will soak up all that lovely acidic water in that pot overnight, and that is where we leave it. Come back for the next step. Okay, so here we are, it's the 7th of January and I am so excited to be back to the dye pots. The yarn has soaked up all that water overnight and the next job is to actually start preparing the dyes. So yeah, let's get started. I'm using a stainless steel roaster for this. I have a couple of these, each one can fit about 3 skeins in, but we're just doing the 2 today. I'm going to add a little bit of water to the pan. Not much, just about 1/4 inch or so, just to stop the yarn from burning. And I'm just going to twiddle this round here now because I'm going to be heating up this water at the back as well to mix up the dyes. Let's get some heat going. Now in this pan I'm going to have slightly acidic water. I'm going to heat that up and use that to mix the dyes. Mix it all up, and then the bare yarn will go in the tray and get nice and wet, and then we'll add the dye using that water to that yarn in that tray. Pretty simple. Let's get this yarn out. The reusable cable ties are an absolute godsend. They're so helpful. Gosh, I forgot how splashy I forgot how splashy this job is. I used to dye barefoot because it was just simpler. So I'm just laying the skeins down on the base of the pan. I'm laying them the same way, so I know I'm dyeing the yarn in the same way. There'll still be a difference in the dye jobs on there because it's just the way it goes with hand dyed yarn. It's not a science. Well, it is a science, but it's not with scientific precision. I can't guarantee that every single skein is going to have exactly the same bits of yarn in exactly the same position as the other. So I've just popped the rest of the water that I was soaking the yarn in back in the pan because waste not want not, and I'm up to prepping the dyes next. Okay, so here we go. I don't have any of my usual things for dyeing, so I'm going to use these plastic cups left over from his birthday party. It's for a baby, so I'm not going to go too heavy on the dyes, so I think I'm going to dye at Babbacombe, which is fairly simple. That was one of my favourite ones to dye. It was my most popular colourway last year, so I'm using some dark blue, might chuck a bit of periwinkle in there for a mix up, and some chestnut. Nice and simple, nice easy way to get back into dyeing. The hot water is going into the cups. At this point I'm like, please don't melt, please don't melt, please cope with hot water. But they did well with the mulled cider over the party season, so I'm sure they'll be fine. And the next thing is to put a little bit of dye into each one and mix it up. You see I've got two separate forks. I'm not going to cross-contaminate these dyes. It's so easy to end up with a muddy colour you wouldn't believe. Yeah, I'm wearing a mask behind the camera. It's very important to look after your lungs, and the dust from the acid dyes is quite bad for your lungs. As soon as it hits the water, it's no longer a problem, but while it's dry, definitely not a good thing to be breathing in. So now I'm just going in with the first colourway. I'm popping it. It does look a little bit stripy here, but don't worry, it will fade out. So this is that lovely rich blue that gives it the kind of ocean-esque vibes. So I'm laying it across both skeins as equally as I can. Again, it's not exact science. So now we're on to the next colour, which is the chestnut. Again, got my mask back on. Here we go with the chestnut. Now this is where I realised there was actually a slight problem here. That looks purple. Chestnut does look purple when you first start, so don't panic, but it looks more purple than usual, and the reason is I didn't look inside this pot before I actually started it. You see I'm picking it up to investigate now, and what's actually happened is when I get to the very last bits of a colour, I will mix that colour with salt, just ordinary table salt, and it creates, it separates kind of the particles of dye, so it creates the opportunity to use them better for speckling, and that's what's happened here. So I've popped it on the yarn anyway, because this is going to be a one-off. It's my first foray back into dyeing. I'm not happy with the saturation, so I'm going to go back and mix some more of that up and add it in a second. Coming back again with that chestnut, it looks even more purpley this time. I'm thinking, what have I done? But trust the process. That's what you got to do at the end of the day. Trust the process. And you can see that rich reddish tone is starting to come through already. The lighting in here isn't great because it is my kitchen, but we make do with what we can. There we go. There it is. Oh, that's better. That's a bit more like Babbacombe. Oh dear. Anyway, so now what we need to do is get some heat under the bootay of that pan. There we go. And there we go. And let that warm for a while. Now while that's warming, it's going to warm to kind of like a good steam. I'm going to put the oven on as well and get that preheating, because I will set my yarn in the oven for a short time, which is quite exciting. There we go. Do your thing. Cook, my pretties, cook. So now I'm just going to turn the yarn over and put colour on the other side. Because I soaked this yarn in acid, I'm pretty confident that it's colour fast, so I'm not too worried about what will happen when I turn the yarn over. Just take the opportunity to untwist it a little, and you can see that colour has not hit the middle or the back of the skein at all. So it's really important to pop some colour there, and the water is pretty much crystal clear, so that dye has exhausted beautifully. Pop it in. It's quite warm. I probably should wear gloves. I should recommend that you wear gloves. Just sort of lighting out. Well, it's bright. Anyway, I'm going to go back in with some more dye now. Okay, ready for the last step? Pop it in the oven. Please excuse the 90s yellow of my wall. I haven't decorated the kitchen yet. Anyway, gas oven. First time cooking yarn in a gas oven. Let's see how that goes. Steam. Nice. This is just going to set the colour. I put it on very, very low gas mark 1, for about half an hour. Just let it do its thing. There we go. Protected by the rabbits. Hello, good afternoon. It is Tuesday, so we are a little way into the week, so it gives you an idea about the process and how long things take. But the yarn is dry. I have taken it off the arrow, which you will have seen already, and I've just hand wound the first one because I couldn't find my Swift. I swear I've seen it so many times since we moved in here and I cannot find it. I've just hand wound the first one into a ball and I think it looks super pretty. Hang on. I just love it. I really love it. And I've got the other one as a hank still to show you. I'm going to show you what it looks like skeined up, twisted up in a second into a skein. I'm glad I hand wound it actually because it was interesting. I filmed the entire thing and it took 15 minutes. So it actually took a lot less time to hand wind than I thought it would. Obviously 15 minutes is still longer than 2 minutes, which is approximately what it would take if I was using my Swift and ball winder. But still, now I'm just going to twist this one up so you can see what it looked like in the skein if you were to purchase it from my website. There we are. It's not super saturated. I've definitely done Babbacombe more saturated before. This is definitely a one-off version of it. I didn't want to overdo it because it is for a baby sweater as well, and I'm just revisiting my colourways and changing them up. But you can see those really beautiful blues and kind of purpley chestnutty browns, which really to me evoke the very unique red clay of the area of Devon we are in. It is very red, and it just says Babbacombe to me, with Neptune's white horses on the trough and a bit of sand and a bit of shingle. It's just Babbacombe in a skein. It really is. So that's it hand wound, and that's it as a skein. Now I am actually going to wind the other one because I'm going to be a good girl and alternate skeins, I think. Oh, or am I? Am I going to alternate skeins? With hand-dyed yarn, it's always a good idea to alternate your skeins. So that is to work from 2 skeins at once, 2 balls at once. Never work from the skein, you'll end up in spaghetti junction and not in a good way. But the idea, because it's done by hand and so it's not machine precision, is that if you work from one skein and then the other, even though these were dyed together and lay side by side and arguably had the same amount of dye in the same places, you run the risk of something called pooling, which is where your colours kind of group together, or you get a definitive line between one skein and another, even in yarn dyed in the same batch. With different dye lots, you're guaranteeing it. Even commercial yarns, you should match dye lots because otherwise you end up with a stripe. So what you do is you have your 2 balls or cakes and you do a couple of rounds from one and then you do a couple of rounds from the other. You don't cut the yarn, you don't have lots of ends to weave in, but there we are. So I think for this one, because it's a sample for my lovely friend Cat, and it's a sample for my shop, it's a test knit for her, and it's part of my business, I'm going to be a sensible grown-up person and I'm going to alternate skeins. And Tabitha's going to fall off her chair if she sees this, but I'm also going to swatch. So yeah, so it's the end of nap time now. Robin is stirring. I've just wound this while watching the first part of Well Loved Knits latest video. I do enjoy Bethany's videos. She's so lovely. I love the way she just talks to camera, and yeah, it's great. Unedited. You're not getting unedited with me. There's too much chaos going on for unedited. Think yourself lucky I edit. Yeah, so there we are, Babbacombe. Isn't it pretty? I'm not going to wind this up just yet. As I say, bobbin's going to be up shortly. I'm going to wind it up later and try and take some daylight photographs of this right now. It is snowing outside, and then I'll get it cast on maybe tonight when Robin's in bed. I'm very excited about that. And I'm very excited that you've been joining me on this journey so far, from undyed yarn to dyed yarn to starting a sweater. And in a few weeks I'll have a full sweater to show you, but I will not make you wait for that. All right, see you soon. Hello, it's now Thursday. I've got both balls hand wound ready to use. So I'm going to be alternating skeins and I'm about to swatch. I'm really excited. They actually look pretty similar. Obviously they're hand wound, so one's slightly tighter than the other, but so it's affecting the way the colours come out. This one seems slightly more brown than this one. So I'm definitely going to alternate skeins and do things like a proper grown-up professional, because 2024 is the year the Midnight Diary goes pro, apparently. You heard it here first. Place your bets below as to how long this lasts or whether we return to our usual nonsense. I'm watching some podcasts, I'm trying some new to me ones. Denim and Rain, I haven't watched her before, but her Vlogmas looks super pretty. I didn't actually watch any of her Vlogmas. I just like, oh, that looks really pretty. Let's put her on watch later and subscribe. So anyway, I'm watching her first podcast of 2024 and I'm enjoying it. It's chill, it's cozy. It's very, very dark in the background, but quite bright at the front. Obviously she's in good lighting and there's a little fire flickering in the background, and yeah, it's giving me cozy vibes, which is great because it's freezing and the house cannot get warm. We turned the heating off and we were like, we're going to really try and go without the heating, and the house got too cold and it is taking all day to warm up. It's like 2 degrees outside. I picked the wrong week to try and reduce our heating. Knit fast, die warm. Okay, so as you will have seen in that last little clip, I've actually now cast on for the sweater. Now, I had an issue with my swatch, which was that it's not here, it's over there. Hang on. See, I was a bit worried about the lighting tonight and blowing the colour up. If I have my head just here, the colours are kind of okay. I'll do some daylight pictures as well and some daylight footage to go over the top of it maybe. Hello, so it is now the next day. I gave up battling the light last night to record the bit about the actual knitting. It was rushed, I was chasing the light, there was noise interruptions coming from upstairs, and the whole thing was just, I wasn't feeling it. So here we are again. So now we've gone from bare yarn to dyeing the yarn, drying the yarn, swatching and casting on. We are now at the point where I am working on the sweater itself. It is living in this absolutely beautiful bag that was made for me by Helen, who goes by Flora Honeypot, in her Christmas swap. It's so, so beautiful, with lots of beautiful hand stitching, hand embroidery. I am being a very good girl and alternating skeins. And someone asked me why I described this merino as bouncy, and you hopefully will have seen that already in the clips before, but in case it needs any further explanation. So with my swatch, I actually ended up a whole inch short on the row count, which is much more important than the stitch count. Stitch count, yes, to a certain extent it does matter. So if you are casting on 64 stitches but you're only taking up the same amount as 58 stitches, then yes, obviously it's going to end up smaller, so you need to keep an eye on it. But the big one that matters in terms of yarn consumption is row count, and certainly in the sense where you've got a yoke where it's counted by rows rather than by inches. You will take more rows to get to the same number of inches. So if you have a set number of rows for the yoke, for the increases, rather than your increases finishing here, they might finish sort of here, which is the problem I had with Robin's flags. Anyway, so I swatched in the round like a very good girl, like a proper professional, because 2024 is the year where I do that. And I was a full inch short on the row gauge. So this is a deadline test knit, and so what I've done is I've kind of thrown caution to the wind a bit, and I've spoken to Cat, the designer, and I've said I'm going to size up. So I've sized up to a 4mm for the twisted rib at the collar, and here it is. And it's a nice stretchy collar that shouldn't have any problems going over a Bubba's head. It can almost go over mine. And as you can see, I'm working down the yoke of this sweater. Oh, this is so much better. You can really see the gorgeous stitch definition today in the natural light. It's got these really interesting details at the raglans where the sleeves are. You can see the kind of slipped cable over 3 stitches. It's so effective. It's so effective, and I really love the way this yarn is working with it. So it's called the Over the Ocean sweater. The stitch definition, the stitch pattern kind of ebbs and flows a little bit, kind of ripples. It's almost got the texture of shingle in a way, but in a nice way, a soft way. And the yarn, Babbacombe, dyed for beach that I'm actually sat not too far away from now in Devon, has that kind of textural look to it as well. I was worried the texture would get lost, but as you can see, if I hold it back here, it really doesn't. You can really see the texture. I'm so thrilled with how it's working up. So thrilled. It's a really lovely pattern. I found it a bit daunting at first doing the slipped cables. They were fairly new to me. I'd done something similar when I tested the Kinsey beanie for her, but that was a couple of years ago now. Because it's an indie pattern, Kat's got her own style of writing as well, which is different to how I write and the patterns that I'm used to. So there was a moment where I thought, have I bitten off too much? Am I trying to do something that I just don't have the brain space for at the moment? But having taken a deep breath and used my knitting knowledge, actually it's fine. It's quite it's not mindless in the sense that a vanilla sock is, or a sweater in the round is, or just simple garter stitch, but I'm already learned by this position in the yoke to read my stitches and to know where I am in the pattern. The one thing that I was concerned about when I started, especially for a baby sweater, is the holes that I was getting all down here. Now these don't look, these are fine. Can I just start actually by saying this is absolutely fine. I'm no longer worried. But when I first started it, everything was so stretched out. I thought, oh my gosh, I hate it. I think I've got gauge now, but it's so open. Why is it so open? Cat's doesn't look open like this. And it's not going to be appropriate for a little 6-month-old Bubba fingers, you know, getting caught in there. But actually, it's almost like when you knit a sock in the round or join anything in the round, the first few rounds are a bit loose, and then it all sort of settles in and tightens up. Just by virtue of continuing to knit, it sorted itself out, and what you're left with is this very, very beautiful little, not quite eyelet thing going on, which is fine. I love eyelets for babies. It's great. But yeah, you can see at the top there, you can see it's much bigger and gappier, but it will tighten up as I keep going. So yeah, so that is that. I've not got much more of the yoke to do, and then it'll be splitting for the sleeves. I've got until the 4th of February to do this, and it's now the 15th, 16th of January, 15th of January, I think. So I've got a little bit of time to get this done, and now I'm into the swing of it. I know that once I've got past the splitting for the sleeves, which isn't too far away, it's about another, it's about another 7, about another 14 rounds. Done 14 already, it's about another 14 until I split for the sleeves on this little one, and then it will be whizzing round and round and round for the body. And I'm quite confident that I'll be able to do the stitch pattern without referring back to the pattern at that point. I just love the texture. I was excited to test this because, as I said, I tested the Kinsey beanie before, and Cat does very interesting things with texture and increases. The Kinsey beanie, I was particularly impressed with the way the increase is built in. It was so clever for a top-down hat. I'd never done a top-down hat before. I just loved it, and I'm having the same sort of fun with this pattern as well. Like I say, It was a bit daunting to start with. It was a challenge. It was different to anything I'd done before, but different is good. And, you know, stretching yourself, having a bit of a challenge is also good. And in this case, it's working out. As I say, I was really worried at one point about these big gaps, but they've tightened up and the result is just so beautiful. I absolutely love it. So look out in a future podcast for when the finished item is finished. When I've finished it, there we go. So yeah, I am using, very excitingly, new knitting needles for these. These were bought for me as a birthday present last year by my friend Vanessa, who used to be my boss. They are I'll put some overlay because I haven't got them with me, but they are the day and night needles from Knit Pro. So they are beautiful wood, and half of them is cream and half of them is black. So it doesn't really matter what colour yarn you're using, you're going to be able to see your stitches, which is great. And they're on the cables, which are also the swivel cables. So the whole thing swivels round without swiveling this. So you don't end up, I mean, I've bent this one, but that's my misuse of it. You don't end up with everything all twisted and loopy. And I'm really, really enjoying working with them. The merino does glide nicely over them. I tend to use zings for most everything else. My interchangeable tips are all zings, apart from there are a couple I've got in symphonies where they just weren't available in the zings at the time when I was purchasing them. Not in general, they just sold out from where I was buying them. But yeah. And the other thing I find frustrating about wooden needles is that the numbers rub off, but these are etched, and again, you're not going to be able to see it because it's not going to focus, but they're etched into the metal. So I'm not going to have that issue either. So there we are. I hope that you've enjoyed this episode of Tales from Midnight Diary, first one, 2024, which is finally getting back to the diary. I do have plans to dye yarn this year. I'm in talks with a couple of local yarn shops. I'm also going to be teaching at Wool on the X on the 24th of February, which is very exciting. Yeah, so there's lots to look forward to. With regards to a regular dye schedule and shop updates and that sort of thing, I'm still finding my feet at the moment. What I don't want, and I'm not going to bog you down with all of this because you don't need to know it, you're probably not worried about knowing it, but we've moved to build a new life for ourselves, and what I don't want is to take that new balance that we're finding and just throw it out the window because I start working too hard again and being too busy and filling my time. I love this business, I love the diary, I love the journey I've been on, and I want to keep it going, and I want to it's going to be a bit more organic. I think that's where we're landing with this. So I don't know when or if there will be regular shop dates again, certainly not this year. I do have plans to do the advent calendar, but I will come to that in the summer. I'm not going to release an advent calendar until August at the very earliest because of payment windows and buyer protection and all that sort of thing. Plus then I'll be a year into my life in Devon, and so I will then know realistically what I can take on and what I can deliver for you. So yeah, in the meantime, thank you very much for sticking with me. Thank you for coming back, and I hope that you enjoy what I've got to put out for you. Have a lovely, lovely day. Take care. Bye.